Today's top stories, February 15, 2021. The IATF respects the decision of Metro Manila mayors to defer the reopening of cinemas in the respective areas. The Philippine General Hospital is ramping up its preparations for the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines. The Bureau of Internal Revenue intensifies its enforcement activities to boost its collections. And indigenous peoples groups hit Bayan Muna Representative Euphemia Cullamat for allegedly contributing to a system of exploitation. Good day, I am Rom Dulfo. Welcome to PNA Newsroom. Metro Manila Council, headed by Parañaque City Mayor Edwin Olivares, says they have decided to defer the reopening of cinemas in the respective areas to March 1. This as they fear that it might cause a spike in the number of COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, Presidential Spokesperson Harry Roque says the IATF respects their decision. He said the concerned LGUs have to issue the guidelines on this matter.
Ang Metro Manila Council po ay hindi po umaagay sumuopos sa pagbubukas ng ekonomiya po natin.
Okay.
Kasi alam naman po natin na hirap na po ang taong bayan.
Opo, tama
yung
po.
Yung unemployment po natin tumataas.
Opo.
Yung pong nagugutom, malaki po ang percentage sa Metro Manila.
Correct.
Pero ang tinitignan po ng Metro Manila Council, yung ano ba yung mabubuksan taon nating establishment? Kung maapektuhan yung yung health protocol po natin.
Opo.
Kasi yung cinema po, makikita po natin po yan, enclosed yan, naka-air condition, at 3 oras po inaabot. Pati ang questionable pa dyan, yung ventilation.
Opo.
Kaya nga po, nag-request po kami sa ating IATF through our chairman ng MMDA, si Chairman Avalos, kinausap po si Secretary Harry at si Secretary Lopez, na i-defer muna po yung pagbubukas ng cinema. At sa darating nitong Wednesday, magkakaroon po ng meeting ang MMC kasama po yung ating economic team ng IATF para mapag-usapan po itong tungkol sa sinemang ito.
Ninirespeto po ng IATF ang posisyon ng ating mga alkalde, lalong-lalo na dito sa Metro Manila. Kaya nga po sa resolution, nakasaad po yun. Ito po ay maging epektibo matapos po ang mga guidelines na i-issue ng mga lokal na pamahalaan, lalo na pagdating sa seating capacity ng mga sinihan. So, hindi naman po natin sinasabi na automatic na mula ngayon magiging epektibo yan dahil nasa lokal na pamahalaan po yan na bumuo ng kanilang mga operational guidelines. Pero kahapon po nagkausap si GM Jojo ng MMDA, si Secretary Lopez, kasama rin po ako sa usapan. At kanina po ay nagkausap po kami ni Chairman Avalos. So ngayon po ang status nito, ang pagpapatupad po ng pagbubukas ng sinihan, kung matutuloy po, ay Marso 1.
After a series of successful simulation activities, the Philippine General Hospital is all set for the forthcoming of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. The PGH is set to receive the first batch of the vaccines. PGH spokesperson Jonas Del Rosario says the 4-step process would be followed for the COVID-19 inoculation drive. Step 1 is registration. Step 2 is the screening process, counseling and checking the recipient's current health status. Step 3 is the vaccination proper. And step 4 is the monitoring of vaccine recipients to see if the vaccine has any adverse effects. PGH assured that its medical response team will be on standby during the vaccination day to immediately assist patients. ILOCOS NORTE intensifies its COVID-19 testing capacity. Meanwhile, more personnel are hired in Cebu to meet the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the city. William Theo with the details.
In Ilocos Norte, the local government has increased its testing capacity and availability to accommodate the volume of authorized persons outside residence, as well as returning residents who need to be tested. Aside from the 2 antigen testing centers in Badok and Pagudpud, COVID-19 testing is also available at the district hospitals in Bangi and Dingras, including at the quarantine facilities of the Department of Public Works and Highways. The local government units in Batak, Bintar, and Bana have also set up their swabbing centers for their constituents to speed up the process of getting samples. In Cebu, the city's Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, added 20 more personnel for its extraction efforts to meet the rising number of COVID-19 cases. Extraction teams are tasked with pulling out coronavirus-positive patients from their houses and transferring them to isolation centers. Meanwhile, 10 more barangay isolation centers with 762-bed capacity have been opened to accommodate the new COVID-19 cases. In Zamboanga City, the recovery rate of COVID-19 remains high despite the 40 new more cases and 3 deaths in the last 4 days. The city on Friday has recorded 3,428 recoveries, or a 92% rate, although the total tally of positives climbed to 3,725. Of the total tally, 124 are active cases, while the mortalities rose to 173 with a recorded 3 new deaths. For the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo.
Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Sal Panelo says President Rodrigo Duterte can never be a lame duck because majority of Filipinos continue to trust and approve his performance. Panelo made the comment in response to Manila Times columnist Lito Monico Lorenzana's claim that President Duterte becomes a lame duck unless he is perceived as still powerful and influential in shaping the next administration.
Ang may monumental failure, ikaw, Lito. Alam mo kung bakit? Kasi hindi mo nakikita yung monumental achievements ng Presidente Duterte. Sabihin mo lame duck. He can never be lame duck. A president who has a rating of 91, trust and approval rating, can never be a lame duck. Tandaan mo yan. At kahit na hindi tumakbo yan si Presidente, o kahit na hindi tumakbo si Sara Duterte, maniwala kayo, kung sino ang tutulungan ni Presidente Duterte ang kandidato sa Panguluhan at sa pangalawang Panguluhan, mananalo. Siyempre, papakinggan ng tao si Presidente Duterte.
PCO Secretary Martin Andanar turned over 50 sets of personal protective equipment, or PPE, and other medical supplies to Caraga Regional Hospital in Surigao City. This was in response to an appeal of the hospital's medical workers for additional PPE. The Caraga Regional Hospital is a Level 2 state-run hospital in Surigao del Norte and is one of the 2 COVID-19 referral hospitals that accommodate confirmed COVID-19 cases. In a Facebook post, the medical workers said that in the performance of their duties, they are routinely exposed to COVID-19 patients. They pointed out that they have limited supply of PPE. After turning over his donations, Andanar urged the health workers to spread love and not the virus. Senator Sonny Angara has filed a bill seeking to exempt donations of vaccines and other critical and essential supplies in the country. Angara said this measure will encourage more of these donations amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Angara said similar incentives were already granted during the implementation of Bayanihan 1 and 2. Under Senate Bill 2046, donations of drugs, vaccines, and medical supplies specifically prescribed and directly used for the treatment of COVID-19 will be exempted from the donor's tax. Also exempted are donations of capital equipment, spare parts, and raw materials needed for the production of personal protective equipment components such as coveralls, gowns, surgical masks, goggles, and face shields. Donations of drugs for the treatment of COVID-19 approved by FDA for use in clinical trials, including raw materials needed for the production of these drugs, would also be exempted, as well as donations of equipment for waste management. The grant of donors' tax exemptions will be in effect from January 1, 2021 to December 31, 2023. Still to come, Task Force Build Back Better will begin its dredging activities in Marikina River, and the Bureau of Internal Revenue intensifies its enforcement activities to boost its collections. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, strongly opposed any application of China's new Coast Guard law beyond Beijing's maritime entitlement. The DFA, however, noted that there is no need for the country to raise the controversial Chinese law before The Hague or any international tribunal. The DFA said the win of the Philippines in the arbitral award in 2016 is already established under international law and has been recognized by numerous states. There is no room for interpretation as there is no issue on the maritime rights and jurisdiction on the West Philippine Sea. However, it pointed out that any threat or attempt at enforcing legislation that is not in accordance with international law is objectionable, illegal, and negates efforts to ensure peace, security, and stability in the South China Sea. Chinese Ambassador Wang Qilian earlier said the new Chinese Coast Guard law will not take strong measures against any fishermen before or after formulation of the law. In the wake of the devastating floods that plunged Marikina City and several other cities of Metro Manila underwater last year, the task force Build Back Better announced that it will begin dredging activities in Marikina River on February 17. Task Force Chair and Environment Secretary Roy Simatu says there will be a pilot dredging in the portion of the river near Marcos Highway in Barangay Kalumpang, while a simultaneous bamboo planting activity will take place on the banks of Barangay Industrial Valley Complex, both in Marikina City. He also said that they will also begin the widening of Marikina River to its original width to address the perennial problem of flooding within the Marikina River Basin. The country moves onward on the road to a national ID system as the pre-registration for the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys, continues in the Davao region. Step 1, or the pre-registration, started in November 2020 in the region and the rest of the country. The PSA in Region 11 said while Step 2 has not yet started in Davao region, it assured that it will make the necessary announcement and advisory. Step 2 is still slowly starting in other provinces in the Philippines. PSA Region 11 added that the central office will build fixed mobile registration centers in selected areas to register individuals for Step 2. For those who have completed Step 1, the PSA advised them to keep their active contact numbers and email addresses so they are informed about the schedule of Step 2. RA 11055, or the Philippine Identification System Act, aims to establish a single national ID for all Filipinos and resident aliens. Those planning to run in the 2022 elections may as well start preparing now. The Commission on Elections has set the filing of certificates of candidacy for all elective positions from October 1 to 8 this year. Under COMELEC Resolution 10695, the campaign period for candidates for President, Vice President, Senator, and party list groups will be from February 8 to May 7, 2022. For local candidates, campaigning begins only on March 25 but also ends on May 7. The election period begins on January 9, 2022 and ends on June 8, during which the gun ban as well as other prohibitions are in effect. Meanwhile, under the overseas absentee voting system, overseas voters may cast their votes from April 10 to May 9 next year. On the other hand, local absentee voters may vote on April 27 to 29. The last day of filing an application to be a local absentee voter is on March 7, 2022. In business, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR, is going after more tax evaders and delinquents as part of efforts to reach its collection target of 2.08 trillion pesos this year. Under the Oplan Candado program, 209 establishments were padlocked for tax law violations, which led to the collection of 607 million pesos in taxes in 2020. It's run after tax evaders or RAID program led to the filing of 157 cases before the Department of Justice and another 24 cases filed with the Court of Tax Appeals. Commissioner Cesar Dulay says the BIR also plans to roll out its enhanced internal revenue stamp integrated system to step up the campaign against cigarette smuggling. Meanwhile, Dulay reported that the BIR surpassed its collection goal in 2020 through the strict monitoring of tax compliance. The Bureau collected a total of 1.94 trillion pesos in 2020, or 15% over the revised goal of 1.68 trillion set by the Development Budget Coordination Committee. Up next, indigenous peoples groups hit Bayan Muna Representative Euphemia Cullamat for allegedly contributing to a system of exploitation. And veteran coach Chot Reyes has been once again tapped to mentor talk and text. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
In the continued fight against communist terrorist groups, cause-oriented groups railed against the deceptive schemes of the CPP, NPA, NDF to recruit more youths to join the communist insurgency. League of Parents of the Philippines Chair Remy Rosadio said communist groups are exploiting youths to overthrow the government, as seen in the NPA's infiltration of schools to recruit students into the armed movement. She assailed the continuous indoctrination of wrong ideologies to the youth to recruit more members of the NPA. Rosadio vowed more protests alongside parents of student activists who were reportedly recruited by progressive youth organizations. The Hands Off Our Children, or HOOC, also condemned the CPP, NPA, NDF's recruitment of children into armed revolution. The HOOC vowed to become more aggressive in the fight against recruitment and radicalization of the youth. They will also continue calls to end armed conflicts, particularly in far-flung communities. Indigenous peoples groups lambasted Bayan Muna Representative Euphemia Cullamat for allegedly having contributed to a system of exploitation by the communist movement. The Mindanao Indigenous Peoples Council of Elders and Leaders and the Mindanao Indigenous Peoples Youth Organization criticized Cullamat for allowing her daughter to be victimized by the New People's Army. Back in November last year, Jevelyn Campos Cullamat alias Kareb, a member of the Sandatahan Unit Pampropaganda of Guerrilla Front 19, was killed in an encounter in Barangay San Isidro, Marihatag, Surigao del Sur. The groups also condemned those pretending to be human rights defenders but are supportive of the systematic recruitment of child warriors. They urged the government and international institutions to tell the world how communist terrorists exploit IP children in order to bring justice to their people. The groups commemorated the International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers last February 12. In Davao City, several local officials and private citizens held a motorcade on Valentine's Day to prod Mayor Sara Duterte to run for president in 2022. About 50 vehicles participated in the Sara Para sa Bayan 2022 motorcade. Barangay 23C Chairman Alimoden Usman, the campaign convener, said they wanted to touch the heart of the mayor for her to run in the next polls. Usman said Mayor Sara is the best person to continue the programs and reforms started by her father, President Rodrigo Duterte, particularly in peace and order and the war on drugs. Another motorcade will be set in Luzon before the end of February or the first week of March. Despite the show of support from various groups, the presidential daughter remains coy in the possibility of aiming for the presidency. In our world news, at least 124 persons have been reported injured in the 7.3 magnitude earthquake that struck Japan on Saturday. The majority of casualties were reported in the prefectures of Miyagi and Fukushima on the eastern coast of Honshu Island. Most of the victims suffered bruises and blunt trauma. Tokyo Electric Power also reported that as a result of the earthquake, a small amount of water spilled from pools storing spent nuclear fuel at the Fukushima 1 nuclear power plant. The spill, however, posed no threat to the safety of Japan's nuclear facilities. Scientists suggest that Saturday's quake was a follow-up of the devastating magnitude 9 earthquake that shook the same area 10 years ago. The quake back in March 11, 2011 caused a powerful tsunami and a nuclear meltdown at Fukushima 1. In sports, Chot Reyes is returning to his old tropa as Talk and Text taps the veteran coach to be their mentor this coming PBA season. PBA Board Chairman and TNT Representative Ricky Vargas praised Reyes for previously having given the team 4 championships. He said they are looking forward to a successful relationship with the multi-titled coach. For his part, Reyes said he seeks to further the advancement of Filipino coaches and in turn, help develop the next generation of Filipino leaders. Reyes is rejoining the Tropang Giga after 9 years, replacing the coach-consultant tandem of Bong Ravena and Mark Dickel. He left Tropang Giga to go full-time with Gilas Pilipinas men and led them to a silver medal finish in the 2013 FIBA Asia Cup. Take one more look at today's biggest stories. The IATF respects the decision of Metro Manila mayors to defer the reopening of cinemas in the respective areas. The Philippine General Hospital is ramping up its preparations for the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines. The Bureau of Internal Revenue intensifies its enforcement activities to boost its collections. And indigenous peoples groups hit Bayan Muna Representative Euphemia Cullamat for allegedly contributing to a system of exploitation. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, check our webpage or head out to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all our social media platforms and websites. It's my last day in the newsroom today as I move on to my next professional opportunity. You'll still be joined by William Theo and Ms. Marita Muaje on PTV4, IBC 13, and PCO's social media pages. Thank you to Director Gigi Agtay and Sir Luis Morente for your trust and confidence. And that's the biggest stories that you need to know from PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I am Rom Dufo. Have a good day.